Welcome to the Sample Chapter Podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. Welcome to episode 273 of the show. This is part 2 of our special feature with Dwight Morgan Jr. This week, Dwight returns with a sample reading from his debut novel, Heat of Hydration. It's the first book in this series, and it's a great reading. You're gonna love it. He's reading a thrilling sample, which is kind of a behind-the-scenes look at an assassin stalking his prey. It's fantastic. You're gonna love it, and that's coming up here in just a moment. Don't forget to click that link in the show notes for last week's episode. I have a link there for you if you're not already subscribed to the show, where you can go back and check out episode 272, where I have my discussion with Dwight, and we talk about all sorts of things. It's fantastic. Did a little bit of talking as well prior to the interview, where I kind of explained a little bit about what went into the long hiatus that the show was on. But we are back. New episodes coming out regularly, and some very exciting authors coming up very, very soon. Meanwhile, I am hard at work, actually, on 2 different projects right now myself. I'm doing the backstory to the Bandit Chronicles, which is interesting for me because I actually wrote probably 95% of this when I wrote the original Bandit story. And this was all, I had it in my head, like, oh yeah, this is how it begins. This is Bandit when he was very young. He was like 12 when the aliens invaded, and it's him and his brother and how they found his hideout and all this kind of stuff and all this. And, after a few chapters, it goes into the real meat of the story, which is like 5 years later, how now Bandit is developed and he's the hero that we know him for the rest of the series. And that got me realizing, man, all this is backstory that I needed to know, but, I can just do a couple of lines here and there and everybody else can know it. But over the years, I've come back to it. I cut all that out to tighten up the first story and threw the reader right into the action with Bandit. But now I'm looking at, what I am doing is I'm rewriting that and expanding on it to make it a short novella. I don't think it's going to hit 50,000. I think it's going to be more like, the upper 20s to 30,000, somewhere in that neighborhood is what I think it's probably going to come out to. We'll see how it goes. I'm not going to hold myself back from expanding on some things. I'm actually playing with the idea of doing a little bit of, once the original story is told, I might do a couple of short stories between 5 and 10,000 words of other little moments throughout his 5 years of solitude. When he was training himself, people that he came across, his distrust of other people until the first book, that kind of thing. So I may have some other little snippets of Bandit's backstory and other stories kind of thrown together is what I'm looking into right now once I complete the rewrite of that. My other story, I'm real torn on going into it too much because it's still developmental. But what's fun about this is, oh my gosh, 25 years ago, I had an idea for a story. And at the time, I was doing online writing courses, completed that, and this was my first story that I was going to write. This was going to be my first book. And I wrote a few chapters, rewrote it a few times, submitted it, couldn't get any traction, couldn't get anywhere with it, and wound up putting it in the file cabinet. Flash forward to here recently, there's been some things in the news, and I'll kind of leave it at that. There's been some things in the news that brought that story idea back to life for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, I already have a story with that. And you know what? What I think I've learned from this experience so far is that there is no wasted time. Many of you authors out there, we all have that file cabinet full of ideas, half-written stories, partially written stories, and then we just put it away thinking, this is crap. here's an instance where that saving it has come, uh, has come full circle. And I'm very motivated with this right now. It's like I'm stopping once in a while to go back to Bandit and do things. But when the inspiration hits, I'm working feverishly on this new story idea and punching out, I mean, oh my gosh, one day I wrote a little over 4,000 words in a day and then like another 3,000 the next day. So putting it out there, I took a sample to my writing group. So if they're listening, Writers of Warrensburg, if you're listening, you guys know what story I'm talking about. They have a little more insight than what the listening crowd has. But suffice to say, as always, whenever I'm ready to make the announcement that this will come out, then I will let you guys know first because you are my devoted listeners and very special to me. So yeah, but that's the plan this year is to have actually these 2 stories come out. I just want to get a little further along before I announce that, yep, it's coming out. Meanwhile, I do want to announce anybody that is in the area this coming weekend, May 17th, I will be at the Knob Noster Open Air Market. I'm going to have a booth there, me and maybe 4 or 5 dozen other vendors, all sorts of people there with lots of goods. Going to be there where it's the Knob Noster, which is right next to Whiteman Air Force Base. So I will be there. It starts at 9 a.m. this coming Saturday, May 17th. So if you can come by, then by all means, stop by, say hi, and let me know that you heard about this. The next week, Saturday, May 24th, I will be in Florida, Missouri, which is a couple hours north of here from where I am. And I will be at it's the Cemetery Walk and Flea Market Craft Fair. This is at the Florida, Missouri Cemetery Walk. This is a cemetery right next to the Florida, I believe it's like right next to the Florida Winery, which right next to that is the birthplace of Mark Twain. And I've been there a couple of times, actually. I camped right next door to this place. It comes practically next door. A few times, actually last year, my wife and I and my in-laws swung by there, but we picked up some wine, and it's a nice little place. So looking forward to that. One of the things I really am looking forward to is that, my short story that came out last year with the Writers of Warrensburg, I have one of the, it's called the Ghost Writers, and one of the ghost writers that make an appearance is Mark Twain himself, Samuel Clemens. So I find that fascinating that, I don't know, maybe it's not really that big of a deal, but, I'm making a connection where it's like, wow, I just wrote this story about Mark Twain and then here's this event. So, but anyway, if you can make it by to that one, let's say you're not in the Warrensburg, Knob Noster area, but maybe you are in northern Missouri perhaps, and you can come by Florida, Missouri on the 24th of May, then I hope you can stop by and say hi. It looks like it's going to be a really good time. It goes from, I believe, 9 a.m. to 2 or 4. It's an all-day thing. It's going to be cool. All right. Well, I think that is all I have for now. Let's go ahead and get ourselves on over to this riveting sample reading from last week's guest, Dwight Morgan Jr.
This is Dwight Morgan Jr., author of the thriller Heat of Hydration, released January 2nd, 2025. I'm going to read chapter 24 of my book today for you listeners of Jason Meiski's outstanding podcast, the Sample Chapter Podcast. For some context and background, Middle Eastern terrorists have a strategy to create a colossal disaster in the U.S. They will blow up the newly constructed United Nations headquarters building on opening day, killing major heads of state, including the U.S. president. However, this ambitious plan requires major funding. A plot to murder 7 young Muslim men, each with term life insurance policies that pay out upon their deaths, has been devised to finance it. Believe it or not, their Muslim parents are in on the twisted scheme. They hire a contract killer. He goes by the initials CK. CK's goal for retirement is 100 kills. He stands at 91 before this latest assignment. He refers to the 7 young men by the numerical order he plans to kill them in. In chapter 21, he murders number 1. In the chapter I'm about to read, he's after number 2. Chapter 24. CK boarded the train going to Pisa and stored his carry-on bag overhead. He had never visited Pisa and looked forward to seeing the tower. He skimmed a tourist pamphlet. The pictures showed detailed and beautifully crafted exterior arches and columns. 5 years after construction started, the tower started leaning because of poor base soil and an undersized foundation. Strangely, the identity of the master architect was unknown. After the train left the station, he stood up, unzipped the front of his bag, and withdrew his file on number 2. Number 2's physical description: Middle Eastern, 5'7", 285 pounds, 23 years of age, pock-marked face, crooked teeth, wide nose, and long, scraggly sideburns that stopped just short of his mouth. He pulled out the full-size photo of the young man with the name written on the back and confirmed the description. CK flipped the page over to other details and found a lot written. Gambles and drinks heavily. Has an outstanding debt of $40,000. Pressure was being applied to repay the debt. The reason number 2 was in Pisa to begin with is the master architect that designed the Taj Mahal in India was a direct ancestor of number 2. Sketches discovered in the family vault, believed to date from the 12th century, closely resembled the Tower of Pisa. Number 2 was researching the possibility that his ancestor designed the Tower of Pisa. And last, many of his life decisions, including his history of betting, excessive drinking, and intimate relationship with other men, disappointed his family. CK started planning for this next assignment. The train pulled into Pisa Centrale rail station at noon. CK returned the file and wheeled his luggage to the street. He quickly entered a taxi and requested the driver to go to Hotel Francisco. CK paid cash for the ride and walked through the hotel's front doors. Hotel Francisco's location was within a short walking distance of the Leaning Tower. After checking in and dropping his bag, he left the hotel and walked until the famous tower came into view. Pausing, he observed a long line of tourists waiting to climb to the top. The ornate freestanding bell tower, as he read, measured 180 feet in height and had 300 steps. Upon purchasing a ticket, he patiently waited his turn. After about 1 hour, he entered the door leading to the steps of the tower, noting that one lock and chain solely provided security for the massive door. He joined a family of 4, comprising parents and 2 young children. They had a 30-minute window to ascend and descend the tower. CK asked the dad, "Do you mind if I go ahead of you? I want to run to the top." The man nodded his head, making way for CK to go ahead. CK took off running up the stairs. Steps were steep and not consistent heights. When he finally made it to the top, he bent over, sucking in air and rubbing his bad knee. He looked at his watch and saw that he had covered the vertical distance in just over 2 minutes. After 5 minutes, he strolled back down, passing the family left below. "Did you make it?" asked the dad. "Yes, but I must get in shape," CK responded. After reaching the bottom and exiting, he surveyed the entire area, noting the roads and the lay of the land. Around 5:00 p.m., he got back to his hotel room and took a shower. He could already feel the soreness in his thighs and butt. He lay down for a brief rest and woke nearly 30 minutes later feeling refreshed. After stretching his muscles, he left the hotel. He had 2 things to do. First, he wanted to see number 2 in person. Second, he needed to observe the Leaning Tower at midnight. Out of his hotel, he turned right and walked nearly a half a mile to the address listed in number 2's file. CK took an outside table at a small cafe across the street from number 2's residence. At 11 p.m., a taxi arrived, and a young man clumsily exited. It was number 2. He handed over payment to the driver and staggered up the steps to the front door, appearing clearly drunk. CK left and arrived at the tower just past midnight. Despite the street lights, there were many dark areas around the tower. One padlock was the sole obstacle to entering after hours, he confirmed once more. Satisfied, he walked back to his hotel, undressed, and climbed into bed. He was content with his plan and fell asleep quickly. CK woke the next morning around 6 o'clock. On the floor, he stretched for about 20 minutes to relieve his muscles after sprinting up 300 steps. CK left the hotel and returned to the main street, searching for a hardware store and a gift shop. He hadn't gone far when he found the gift shop. He went inside, bought a couple of things, one being a greeting card. After paying cash for the items, he asked the clerk for directions to a hardware store. 2 streets over, he found the store and purchased a padlock and duct tape. He needed to finish some work before going to number 2's office during their lunch break. CK was confident that number 2 did not miss many meals. He went back to his hotel and emptied the items onto the small desk. Opening the card, he wrote in caps, "If you would like to have your gambling debt paid off, meet me at the Leaning Tower of Pisa tonight at 2 a.m. Signed, a brother in Islam." CK put the note in the envelope and wrote number 2's name on the outside. He put the envelope in his pocket, checked the address and office number in number 2's file, and walked to number 2's office building, arriving a little before noon. After 10 minutes, he saw number 2 leave. CK went inside the small office block, and a short distance down the hall was lettering on a door that read, "Architectural plus Art Research, Room 107. He slipped the card through the mail slot in the door and promptly left. Anticipating he would complete his assignment that evening, he then walked to the railroad station and made reservations for 7 a.m. to Florence. Upon returning to the hotel, he rested briefly. In the evening, he rose, dressed in dark casual clothes and tennis shoes, packed a small backpack, and left. It was about 1:15 a.m. when he got to the tower. He stood in the cathedral's doorway alcove next to the tower, ensuring no one was nearby. CK went to the doors of the tower, slid off his backpack, and removed a pen light and some lockpicks he always carried with him. Turning on the pen light he held between his teeth, he picked the lock and removed it from the chain. He put the old lock in his backpack to dispose of later, and then waited in the shadows inside the entrance, hoping number 2 had taken the bait. At 1:50 a.m., a taxi's headlights bathed the tower. Number 2 stepped out, settled the fare, and lumbered over to the tower entrance. The door was open with the chain hanging from the door. CK flicked the light a few times, and number 2 walked through the door. CK stepped out of the shadows. "I'm glad you came," said CK as he walked past number 2 and slid the new lock through the 2 ends of the chain and locked it. "Who are you?" "People call me CK," answered CK. "Did you send the note?" A knife suddenly materialized in CK's hand. "Not important, but this is. I will probably end your life tonight, but I will give you some hope. I'll allow you to race me to the top of the tower. If you win, you continue living and have enough money to pay off your debt. If you lose, well, you're still debt-free." Number 2 stared at the man and appeared stunned at what he was hearing. He whined, "Look at me. Do I look like I'm in shape?" "Nope. It's only 8 floors. It should take you about 4 minutes to get to the top," said CK. "I will give you a 3-minute head start. And here is $10,000 to show you I'm serious." He pulled a neat stack of bound bills out of his backpack and handed them over. Number 2 began bending at his waist and almost completed a half squat to loosen up. "Where is the remaining amount of money?" asked number 2. "In a backpack at the last stair landing," answered CK. Number 2's face showed slight excitement, seeing a way to escape debt. With the belief that he could accomplish anything in 4 minutes, this challenge seemed attainable to him. Thunder rumbled in the background as it sounded like a storm was imminent. Number 2 followed him to the start of the stairs. CK pulled a small miner's headlamp from his backpack and handed it to him. Whenever you're ready. Number 2 squeezed his enormous head into the elastic strap, clicked the lamp, and he took off. He moved with surprising quickness for a man his size. He started up the first floor. The headlamp cast an erratic beam that created menacing shadows as his heavy footsteps pounded the stone treads. He made it up the first flight of steps and headed toward the second floor. As he reached the second floor, he felt his feet grow heavy. Where he had almost been jogging, he now slowed to a fast walk. He started up to the third floor, and his breathing was raspy. He found it harder to get enough air, but he had to keep going. Pushing past the third floor, he was doing everything he could just to move his feet. He was having a tough time breathing, but made it to the fourth floor. His muscles were screaming for relief, but he kept moving, one step after the next. At the fifth level, he stopped just for a few seconds to catch his breath. A voice echoed in the stairwell. "Here I come." He heard shoes pounding against the steps below. Redoubling his efforts, he started toward the sixth floor. His lungs were like overinflated balloons, ready to pop. His whole body ached, but he was determined to win. He got to the sixth floor. The footsteps below were getting louder. He could not stop now. He willed himself to keep going, but he could barely lift one leg ahead of the other. Somehow he kept moving and made it to the seventh floor. Now he was lightheaded, his vision blurred. The footsteps were closer. He heard the man announce that he was passing the sixth floor. His legs wouldn't move. He began crawling, determined not to give up. The man below announced he was at the seventh floor. How did he get that close so quickly, Number 2 wondered. He kept crawling. 2 more steps. Footsteps sounded right behind him. Number 2, despite his condition, did something extraordinary. He dove, like a belly flop into a pool, onto the stair landing. A loud whoosh burst from his lungs through his mouth. He made it. He won. But he could not lift his head and find the backpack of money. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't move. What was happening? The floor seemed to move up and crush him. His chest hurt so much. His heart was pounding out of control. Stars flickered in his eyes. Everything went black. From a few steps away, CK watched. His plan had worked, causing enough stress and panic that Number 2's body just couldn't take it. Had he not died of a heart attack, CK's backup plan was to stuff a sock in his mouth and wrap the duct tape around his head to secure it, as he would be completely exhausted. He grabbed the headlamp and the $10,000 that Number 2 still held. CK used the headlamp in his right hand to search the man's pockets and locate the note he wrote. Satisfied, he jogged down the stairs. He unlocked and relocked the padlock and started walking back to his hotel. His fingerprints were surgically altered many years ago, so he wasn't worried about leaving a clue. The clouds opened and drenching rain poured over him. By the time CK reached his room, the rain had completely soaked him. He stripped off his wet clothes and took a nice warm shower. Content, he was asleep in minutes. Kill count, 93. Awakening early the next morning to catch a 7 a.m. train, he checked out, paid in cash, and got a taxi. They couldn't find the body of Number 2 immediately, as removing the new lock would take some time. He reached the train station a few minutes afterwards and retrieved a small package. He put plenty of postage on it and dropped it in the mailbox. At 6:50, he waited on the bench near the tracks and used the remaining 10 minutes. He unzipped the front of his luggage and pulled out a file labeled Number 3. 4 days later, the small parcel arrived. A seam opened the package and pulled out a 3-inch tall ceramic leaning tower of Pisa. On the bottom of the base were words Number 2 and the date, written in black ink. He took the ceramic statue to his workshop, picked up a hammer, and smashed the replica into many pieces. He then swept the pieces into a wastebasket. He opened a small notepad and struck number 2's name.
All right, that was Dwight Morgan Jr. reading a sample chapter from his debut novel, Heat of Hydration. Hey, that book is available in the links below. You can also find and follow Dwight with his website, links there, and last week's episode. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out next week when I'm back with a new author, a new book, and an all-new sample chapter. Take care, everybody. See you soon.